Winter is coming. And this winter, we're actually going to winterize our water lines. Previous years, so last year and I think even the year before, we had sort of a temporary setup and we were hesitant to put all this effort into winterizing the lines, and we thought we could get away with it because it wouldn't freeze very much, but then it was a particularly cold winter and did freeze a lot and it was a huge hassle. But now we're finally in our intended position with a setup that's more permanent. So we're gonna winterize the water lines by putting heated cable on it, and that's what this video is gonna show, hopefully. And I just wanted to show what it is like before we start. So the water line comes up through the ground, comes up this post, and there's a faucet with a splitter. White line here, it's just a little shorty that goes to the tiny house. Black one is a utility hose that we use to fill Ben's water and just whatever we need a local hose for. And this is just a little piece of scrap that I slapped together just to give it a tiny bit of protection from direct rain. So I'm gonna get started, and I'll also point out that we do have an outdoor plug for power on the other side of the house. So I will run an extension cord under the house, which will be fine because it'll be protected from the elements, just close to here. And I'll have the heated cable plug in here, and then we'll run it along and we'll see what we're gonna do. We won't be able to heat the entire utility hose, but we do have a pretty long heated cable because of how we were going to use it before. We needed more length, so I'll just try to use up the extra length as far along that hose as I can. This is the type of heated cable that we got. It's just got a short little cord end and a little thermostat temperature sensor thing there, and then the whole black portion is heated when it senses that it's cold enough to turn on. And this is just a little short guy. We will have to use this on the other side for our little pee drain. And then we have a much longer one for here. And then we've got this wraparound insulation that hopefully will fit all the way around, but if we can't get it on there by itself, like it has an adhesive thing that we'll try to use, but we also have duct tape, like all-weather duct tape. Might turn into a bit of a hack job looking thing, but we're gonna make it work. We've got the main heat tape secured to the hose, and it was actually pretty painless. It's kind of stiff and it's like a flat cable because you want to lay it up against the tubing, but it sort of behaved and contoured to the hose, and we just put little bits of tape at intervals, as you can see. I got the little sensor here with the cord end up close to the fitting here. There wasn't even really space if I wanted to put it up top here, but I also thought I'll keep it down just in case we need to get at this to undo it for some reason. So there's a tiny section here that's not going to receive heat from the heated portion, the black part, but obviously, you know, there's a source of heat inside, like right in here is the inside, and then, you know, heat down here. I don't think it's gonna freeze here in this tiny little section that's not receiving heat, and we'll put the wraparound insulation on it as well. So obviously this probably looks a bit like a hack job because it's a bit awkward the way we've got, you know, the line coming up, and then there's two, so there's three lines here to deal with. And what I opted to do was leave a bit of cable that'll just be in free air. I thought initially I would, you know, come up, go down the main supply that's coming out of the ground, and then just come back up that same line and then shoot down the hose. But then I'm doubling up the heated cable. So, and then it would also require most likely, you know, at least one spot where the cable would have to cross itself, which is a bit sketchy because now you've got heat cable on heat cable delivering heat into itself as opposed to delivering heat onto a cold pipe. So I'm pretty sure, you know, you'd risk burning out the cable doing that. So with that in mind, decided to go, you know, once I went down the main supply here, it just came up in free air. And so the heat produced by this like 1.5 feet of the cable will just dissipate into the air. and then it comes back, catches sort of another part of this bulky faucet and splitter thing, so that it's kind of like there's multiple points of contact here, and then the rest of it just shoots down, and you know, it only goes maybe like a third of the way down this hose, but might as well, you know, use up the rest of the length that way. So just wanted to show you how we did this before we wrap it with the insulation, and we'll just do that now and then try to get this sort of secured back up here against the post. We got the insulation wrapped around all the hose and tubing, and it did actually wrap all the way around, which is a little bonus because it has this these adhesive edges that you peel off this yellow stuff, and it sticks to itself. And it worked, even though this is a little bit old. It stuck together, but we didn't want to trust that entirely, so we did put duct tape periodically just so that it's not going to come apart on its own out here. This looks a little bit like a disaster, but we managed to get, you know, insulation kind of all on it and just wrapped it up while still maintaining access to all 3 of the valves, which is nice. Here's the little piece of the cable that's just in free air. I'm not sure if this would hold up to UV, like if it would degrade under direct sunlight, but we are on the north side and it is the winter coming, so I'm not worried about it for this season. And you know, I use these Talon straps to hold the tubing that comes out of the ground to the post here, but now that it's wrapped in insulation, we can't really do that, so just use this really stiff wire here. It's actually for the electric fence, and just kind of tacked it in place and sort of is holding it. So it's a little bit of it's definitely just like making it work with what we've got situation. And although it looks kind of awful, I'm pretty happy with how it feels functionally. Like, you know, it's not going anywhere. It's wrapped nice and tight. The heated cable behaved. You know, we got it where we wanted it to, and we even got insulation, you know, right up to the point of entry here with the cord end sticking out. So I'm feeling pretty good about it, and we'll be, I guess, reporting on how it performs over the season. And the last thing we need to do is just a mini version of this on our little pea drain, pea trap on this other side of the house, and then of course get everything plugged in. All right, it was getting a bit too dark to film last night, but we did finish up. So this is the following morning, and you can see that we've got the pea drain wrapped up the exact same way we did with the water supply. And if you're wondering what this pea drain is, we show all about it in a recent drainage vlog video. So I'll put a card up for that. And what I want to point out here is that because it's such a short run, even this short heat cable had a bit of extra length. And I just took a minute to string it up here in free air rather than laying it on the ground. Now, I don't think it ever is going to put out enough heat to start a fire, but because there's like, you know, dried grass under here, it just gives me that like 100% confidence that there's nothing sketchy down here to worry about. And it's actually kind of nice to have a bit of the cable exposed like this in both cases, because I can touch it and just see if it's on or not. So when I first plugged them in, I grabbed both spots that were exposed and could feel that it was warming up, which is good to confirm, you know, that it's operating correctly. And another thing that I wanted to point out was that it's going to be a bit confusing here because of the double lights. The extension cord that I have that has a splitter end has its own built-in light, which is exactly the same as the one on the heating cable. So I'll show a quick shot of the other heating cable just so you can see it in isolation. And so what I'm trying to point out here is that the heating cables have little indicator lights on their cord ends. And when I first plugged them in and they first came on, I threw away the packaging, so I wasn't sure if the light only came on when the thermostat was closed and it was running, or if it was on all the time. And I checked it. It was running for a good 10-15 minutes, and then we ended up, finishing up for the night and going inside. But I came out a bit later and just touched it again, and it had cooled off, so it had shut down, and the light was still on. So, and that makes sense because, for one, the cable would require extra wiring for that to only light up when the thermostat was closed, which is possible, but it makes way more sense that it's just permanently on, because really what you want to visually be able to see just at a glance is that there is power to your cable, not whether it's running or not. Because if it only came on when it was running, then there'd be no difference between the light being off because it wasn't running or the light being off because there was no power. And the last thing I'll point out is that I strung up the extension cords, in this case on the axle, and over there, just the way that it's hanging, it's all such that there's no connections being made and like just laying on the ground. So if it rained really hard and sort of the ground got soaked and it was wet under here, there's no connections against the wet ground. So pretty confident I've thought of everything in terms of everything being safe and gonna operate nicely. I'd love to hear you guys' comments on your experience with winterizing water lines and the like. And if you have any criticisms or comments on what I've done here, if you think it's gonna work, if you think I've missed anything important.
When the sun hides for years.
I don't know what else to say. So let's get started, shall we? Next meme.